I just want to say hello to everybody. Thank you for coming. And to those of you who are new, welcome. We are So Say We All. We are a nonprofit, literary arts nonprofit. We're dedicated to helping people tell their stories and tell them better. And this is one of our shows, which is, as you know, our unscripted, 5 minutes or less, no notes storytelling get together. We've decided we like to describe it as kind of a campfire, a digital campfire now, where we pass the talking stick around. You don't have to tell a story, you can just listen. But a lot of times what happens is as you listen, something occurs to you and you go, oh yeah, I have a story about that. So at any point you can put it in the chat room that you want to tell a story, and that's fine. We also have our other regular storytelling show, which is Vamp. And that is our monthly curated storytelling show. That is something that you submit to. And both Long Story Short and Vamp have monthly themes. Our Vamp theme this month is our annual Dirty Talk show. And that is this month it has the sub theme of super spreader. So we invite you to all please attend and listen into that show.
I didn't know that was inside of me.
Yeah, then I know that.
Okay, so I'm writing down everyone's names now. David, you want to?
Yeah, tonight's theme is called. You can correct me if you can. I can't believe that I had that inside me. Is that right?
Can't believe that was inside me.
That's very good. I really enjoyed that one the first time I saw it. And some of you mentioned earlier about not having a story that fits that theme, but I believe you do, because you really have to look at each theme. It's very open. I know what it sounds like you had a gun in your pants or whatever it might be. You know, maybe it was cancer, maybe it was COVID, but there's so many other ideas that come to this. This is about vulnerability in this setting. So having something in you can be bravery, can be shame, can be not standing up when you should have stood up, or standing up when you didn't think you could. So think about that for a little bit. It doesn't necessarily have to be literally what theme says, but something in that, right? How about, what names do you have so far? How many names do we have? I should bring a computer to this.
We have 7 names.
7 names. And if you were to put them in a hat and mix them all up, what would it sound like?
It would sound like a bunch of pieces of paper crinkling around inside a hat. So hold on one second, I'm still tearing them up.
Oh, okay. That's the sound I was looking for, right there. Very random noise. Let's just say this up front. If your name happens to be first up, it's hard to go first and open it up. But with that said, when your name is called first, nobody's picking on you. It's the way that it works. It's a very unscientific method of just choosing your name here. Some of you might have an idea later in the show too that you want to talk about something. Feel free to put your name in there as well, and we'll see where that takes us. Again, just be yourself. All true stories here, 5 minutes or less. It's a true story when you are in it, right? And that's all we're looking for. And don't forget, all of your bad decisions you've made in your whole life aren't worth anything until you've told them to a group of strangers. So take that with you, if you will.
All right, we have our first person. Vicky
Chavez. Ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I knew I was going first. I knew it.
Yeah. So did we, Vicky. We determined that like hours ago. So thanks for playing along.
I know it. Okay.
Vicky, I've met real rooms of Long Story Short, coming in, not knowing what this was, and walking in, sitting down, taking a seat and listening, and then getting up and telling a story. And so I want to welcome you back. I haven't seen you in a while, Vicky. You've done some Vamp shows as well?
Yep.
Very good. Do you have anything you want to plug that you're doing in your life?
Just teaching, man. Just got back to teaching and it feels great. I
What do you
love
teach?
what
What
I
do you teach again?
I teach stuff that how to dismantle white supremacy and male supremacy. I teach feminist studies and ethnic studies, Chicano studies, raza studies.
Very good. Well, I thanks again for coming on tonight. And ladies and gentlemen, put it together, Vicky Chavez.
Hi guys. Hi Kelsey. Oh, Kelsey's here. I'm so stoked. Okay, so I have a story. I've been thinking about this. Trigger warning, there is some violence in this story, so just know there is going to be a moment of violence associated with it. So back in the old days, back in 1991, I was dating this guy, Craig, and I was in love with him. He was an existentialist. He could quote Camus and Nietzsche and Sartre, and he was just the most amazing, smart 19-year-old my little eyes had ever come across. And he looked like Jim Morrison. This is important. He had long hair. He looked like Jim Morrison. I was in love. And we'd been dating about, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks. He'd won me over by playing a Neil Young song for me. So if that gives you a little understanding of why I fell so hard for this guy. And I was just gaga over him. Anyhow, so during this time, he was really in love with this band, Nirvana. This is 91. It's they're just on the back burner. People are starting to talk about this band, Nirvana. This comes into play later. Anyway, so I would see him at night at this place called Soho down in Hillcrest. Back in the day, it was an old coffee house. And I'd get there about 11 o'clock at night, and we'd hang out till like 4 in the morning. And it was just life back then. And I got there a little late, just a little late. And his best friend, Travis, was there. And Travis is like, "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here tonight." And I'm like, just figured I'd show up, see what was going on. So where's Craig? And he's like, "You don't want to know." I'm like, "No, you need to tell me where he is. Like, if he's here, what's going on?" And it's like, "He's out back in my car." I'm like, "Well, how come he didn't come in?" He's like, "Don't go back there." So of course, being the cabrona that I am, I need to go find out what's going on with the love of my life and go find him. So I go out back in the parking lot and I see Travis's car, and it's like rocking around, like moving, shaking around. Oh, that's so weird. So I go up to the car and I look in the window and I see Craig's back. And I tap on the window and he turns and there's this half-naked chick in the car with him. And I go and I stand there and he gets out of the car. And I'll never forget this. He pulls back his long hair. It's in his face. Mind you, he looks like Jim Morrison. He's 6'2", 260, but I mean, he is just this mammoth guy. Not that I'm any shrinking violet. I mean, I'm 5'10", 200. So I mean, I've got my own size, but he gets out of the car and as soon as he pulls his back, I experienced something I'd never experienced before. And that was just pure rage. Rage in a way that I had no idea existed within me. I balled up my fist and I slugged him across the jaw. He went flying back against the car. His whole body went flying back. 6'4", 260 pounds of him went flying back. I had no idea I was capable of that kind of rage and anger. That is the one time in my life I've ever hit somebody. I've never hit anybody since. Because after that moment, I was filled with such shame and such regret that I had just physically hit somebody. But it also felt fucking good in that moment. I went back in, sat down with Travis, and just sat there in my anger. And someone came running in and said, "Craig needs you. He needs to go to the hospital." So Travis left. I didn't see Craig for a couple weeks after that, but I saw Anne, who was in the car with him, and she and I became friends. Come to find out, we were a lot alike. This is the good part of the story now. So 91X, the local radio station, had this little contest where you could write a story. And if you picked 3 songs and they played them, you know, you got your little moment of, well, I'm a really good writer. So I write a little story to 91X. They read my story on the air. They play my 3 songs. And they tell me, come to the station to pick up your prizes. In my prizes were 2 tickets to Nirvana, playing at Iguanas in Tijuana. They had just hit. Nobody knew anything about them. So I had these 2 tickets, and it felt so weird that I'd won these tickets for hitting this guy and telling the story. And Nirvana's his favorite band in the world. Well, here's my moment of regret. I couldn't bring myself to go to the concert. It felt so wrong that I got it out of an act of violence. So I had a friend who wanted the tickets and bought them. And he told me, you shouldn't sell these tickets because one day you're going to look back and be able to say that you saw Nirvana before anybody else. He's like, it'll be like saying that you saw Zeppelin in their heyday. I didn't believe the guy at the time, but of course, history tells a different story. So I didn't go, okay, so being the dumbass I was back then, still am, I did get back together with Craig. We ended up being together for 5 years, and we saw Nirvana in '93, 3 months before Cobain died. So I did get to see them, but yeah, I missed out that first time. Anyway, that's my story.
Thank you, Vicky. That's a good one.
Sorry, I was asking you questions, realizing I was muted. Thanks for sharing Craig with us, Vicky. Was that at Iguanas, the show?
Yeah, it was at Iguanas. Yeah, I missed it. I missed that.
Saw a lot of good shows
Yeah.
at Iguanas. One of my favorite shows I saw the Ramones for the 20 billionth time in my life, and it's never enough.
Yes.
But I got in, it was sold out, and I got to the door, and there was a woman with a clipboard, and I did not have a ticket, and there were no tickets for sale. But she was showing me the guest list. So I said, yeah, I'm that guy, +1, and they let me in.
That's rad. The one thing I will say is that now when I have students in class who will wear Nirvana, I teach college. So when students wear Nirvana t-shirt and I tell them I saw them, I get instant cred, cool points with all my students when I tell them that I saw them. So it's kind of worth it.
Right. They're like, oh, you shop at Target too? That's so cool. Awesome. Thanks, Vicky. Did someone else join us and add their name to it? We have what, 7 more to go? Is that what it is?
We have 6 more.
All right, let's roll that drum. And number 2, coming you. I'm just gonna make up prefixes for whoever comes up next, and they're stuck with this moniker. The next person is incapable of telling the truth. Give it up for
Joe. He only said he didn't want to go first, so he lucked out.
Is that Joe Levitt?
It is.
Joe,
Right.
Thanks again for tuning in. Joe's from Sydney. That's where you live right now. Is that where you are at this moment?
Yes, it is.
I'm sorry,
Right.
real quick. Tell us how you became into. You did a vamp show. Is that it? Is that
Yes. How I did vamp show?
Yeah.
I wrote a big long memoir during lockdown about my partner and I, and it got accepted for something in Australia called Queer Stories, only they needed a shortened version. So I wrote a shortened version, and while I was on the Submittable website, I saw that So Say We All was looking for gay stories. So I just dropped the shortened version in there just to see what would happen. And then I got a call or a message saying, look, leave that submission there, but we would like you to do VAMP in January. So I hadn't really actually thought to do it, but I was invited to do it, and it turned out to be a really great experience.
That's great. Joe, there's not a better feeling than something happened in your life that was never easy, whatever your story is. And to have someone else to hear it and go, we'd also be interested in that. It's such a good feeling. Like it's always for something. So I look forward to hearing it. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Levitt.
Right. Well, this is a very loose interpretation of a theme. It's more about what I couldn't believe I had inside of me as far as nerve and cojones, I suppose. I moved to Australia 25 years ago. My sister had moved here 5 years before me to get her PhD, and I had come to visit her before she was moving back. On the day of my flight, some bad news came in while I was in the shower from my parents. And my sister said, why don't you stay? Of course, I had a job and a mortgage and I couldn't stay, but she said, if you come back, I'll stay as well. So I flew home to the States. It took a while, but I sold my house, I sold my car, all my furniture, everything I own, I came back. To become a resident of Australia, they have this crazy point system where you get points for age and education, language skills, work skills. I had all the points you could get maximum in every category except for age. And I was over 35, so I didn't meet the test. So after selling everything, I ended up coming on a 6-month tourist visa with a few dollars, as much as I could carry, and the very real chance I might have to run home with my tail between my legs. I was a nurse at the time, so I started banging on hospital doors. I had obtained a New South Wales nursing license, even though I wasn't allowed to use it. If they got their money, they were happy to give you a license. I just didn't have the working permit from an immigration standpoint. So I banged on enough hospital doors and engaged a migration consultant to the point where someone finally said, we really need intensive care nurses. We would like to sponsor you. However, we've never sponsored anyone to be a permanent resident. How about we sponsor you to be a temporary resident? We'll make you permanent later. And I thought, no, you just don't know. And I explained to them that I really had it in my head. I was starting a new life here and I needed my permanent residency. So I went back to my migration consultant, and she said she had found out that you can't go from a tourist visa to permanent resident while you're in the country. You can't lodge those papers. And I said, well, great, I'll go to New Zealand for a week and I'll lodge the papers from there. But you had to be living there for 6 months. It was all very complicated, but I found that I could not go from being on a tourist visa to becoming a permanent resident. So I couldn't believe that I had this inside of me. I went back to the hospital and I said to them that I'd had a good long think, and I had decided that in order to help them meet their needs and the needs of their patients, that I would allow them to sponsor me as a temporary resident in the first instance. But I hope they hadn't minded that I filled out the forms for the temporary as well as the forms for the permanent. And I'd really appreciate it if they would just sign both of them now and leave the date on the permanent residency application blank. And they did. I couldn't believe it. It was just extraordinary. So there was a gray area between temporary and permanent. I signed a 2-year contract and I waited about 4 months, got a letter from the nurse manager, we sponsored Joe. He's now an integral member of the team. We would like to further sponsor him. And within 6 months of it, I had become a permanent resident. I worked for them for 2 years, which was the minimum to become a citizen. I then got my citizenship and very quickly moved on, and 25 years later, still here, very happy. But yeah, I could not believe that that was inside me, to just sell everything on a punt and go overseas and try to work it out later. And that's my story.
Thanks, Joe. You can tell someone has left their zip code they grew up in when they say words like, what was the word, Joe? Punt?
Punt, yes.
Explain what punt is. Tell me what punt is.
Gamble. It's a gamble, a chance,
Okay, very nice.
a shot.
Right. Everybody should leave their zip code they grew up in at least once. You
Mm.
go back, that's fine, but you have to leave at least once and change zip codes several times before you find out where home is. So you've become a resident alien now? Is that how it works?
No, I'm a citizen here.
Oh, even better. Okay.
Yeah.
Me too. Where did you grow up? What city did you grow up in the United States?
Philadelphia.
Oh, it's a great city actually.
Yeah. No, it is. Still some people over there that I'm in touch with, and lots of great things about there. But I've really found my spot here. Much more suits my lifestyle.
That's great, Joe, because you're better known now as the guy that moved to Australia. We just haven't seen him in 20 years. So thanks for joining us. Thanks.
Thank
Joe.
you.
Very good. Coming up next, we have what does that piece of paper say, Jennifer? Who's this next person? Number 3.
Hold on one second because I'm adding, we have John Jarvis who wants to be added. So I'm adding him to the list.
Okay.
And then we have someone else who just joined the room. Redbird Bean. Who's Redbird Bean?
Redbird Bean. Oh, that's the one with, oh, there's Redbird Bean.
Yeah, that's me.
Oh, okay. Where are you coming
Hi.
from? Sesame Street? Where
I
is that?
am from Indiana, and my friend Amy told me about this tonight.
Amy,
Hello.
Amy Lawson?
Fan.
Okay, I just made that other name up thinking, yes, that's her. Welcome from Indiana. And is that, let's see, who else I haven't seen since the last time I zipped through here? Hi, Kelsey Schultz, how are you?
Always wonderful to be back with So Say We All. Hi.
Kelsey's in a truck stop in Colorado somewhere. Is that right?
Very funny. This would be a really cute, Marsha P. Johnson picture at a truck stop. Yeah, I'd hang out there. No, I'm in my bedroom.
Very good. You're in Boulder, is that where it is?
Almost. Yeah, I'm an hour north of Denver in Fort Collins.
That's all you got to say, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're from England, you always say, I'm from outside of London, because nobody else knows anything else in England. So our next person coming to the stage is going. Jennifer, who is that next name?
I'm sorry. I've already forgotten what Red Bean Bird said your real name is.
Amy.
Amy.
My name is Sarah.
Sarah. Way to go, David. Sarah, would you like to tell a story tonight?
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to add you in too.
Okay. All right. So
Great.
here we go.
All right, so we're going to mix up some names here.
Real quick, I want to say hello to David Zafra. How are you, David?
I'm good. I mean, I
Good,
guess
man.
good enough.
How's everything in your world?
It's it's awful and fine at the same time.
Nice. You got twins, don't you?
I do.
Yeah. Are they a blast?
Yeah, they're awesome. We just the three of us just started skating, rollerblading and roller skating together, so we keep busy with that.
That's great, man.
It's
Very
nice.
good to see you, man. I'm glad you can make it tonight.
Yeah, thanks. Good to see you.
Yeah, man.
Got a name here.
Here we go.
Our next storyteller is Mr. Kevin Manley. I don't know if you can see
Holy.
this, but yeah, I know it's backwards.
Ladies and gentlemen, he teaches math by day because he's a superstar with math. But at night, he's also an avid attendee to, long story short, I love this guy every time he walks in the room because he always has a story that I always have to sit down no matter what's going on in the room and listen to Kevin. He's also a whiz with AV. He's currently directing a play. He's got a lot of stuff, and I'm always glad to see you, Kevin. Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Manley.
Hi. Good to see everybody. I came to San Diego 28 years ago for two kind of embarrassing reasons. I was at the Naval Academy and I was selecting where I was going to go after graduation. And you don't get to go wherever you want, but I mean, I had a good pick of where I wanted to go pretty much around the world and do what I wanted to do. And I picked San Diego because I I'd broken up with a girlfriend, and it was and I just told myself I wanted to get as far away from her as possible. And so San Diego was the furthest I could go and remain in the United States. I did not want to go abroad. I'd been abroad a little bit and didn't really love it. And as far as like living, I knew I'd have to go abroad on a ship, but San Diego was the place. The other reason I chose San Diego was because that summer I'd seen the movie Point Break. So I was going to go live the Point Break lifestyle in San Diego. And I got here, I was in the Navy, and I was a terrible naval officer. I did not want to do it. It was like the last thing I wanted to be doing. And every free moment that I had, I spent in the library at the, what is that? As the Naval Amphibious Base. And I spent every free moment I had in the library there. And one day I ran across a book called The Art of Body Surfing by Judge Robert Gardner. And you know, I'd come to San Diego after seeing Point Break, but like I had no into the surfing community and surfboarding and all that. But I had this book, The Art of Body Surfing. And all my life, I've always been a person who I read stuff. I read about it and I figure that's how I learned to type. I learned how to type from reading about it in an encyclopedia. So I specifically remember that when I was like 10 years old. So I read this book about body surfing. I went out to Ocean Beach and I started catching waves. And it was just, it became who I was like that. And in fact, I have lived with this mythology my whole life, really, that I'm some kind of body surfer or something. That's kind of what I tell myself. But I actually only did it for like 3 years. Like, I mean, I started in the summer of 92, and I think 95 was the last time I went, because I moved away from the beach and I just got busy with life and I didn't do it anymore. This other mythology that I have about myself is that I hate the beach. I don't like the sand. The water is too cold. Don't like the sun. And so I just stopped going and did not go for real about 25 years. I would go if there was some event, someone having a party there, or if the family was going there, I would go and I would hate it. And I would just sit there and be miserable the whole day. We went into quarantine in March, and I'm here with my wife and my 2 children, and we took it really seriously. We did not go anywhere for months. And then the first thing that we were going to allow ourselves to do was, it was like in June, somewhere around in there. And we're like, okay, seems like we can go to the beach. This is all right. We'll do this. And so my wife started taking the girls to the beach, and I was always like, I don't really want to go, but my daughters, when they have outings, they always want me to come. And so I would come and I'd do yoga on a towel on the beach, and they really wanted me to get in the water with them. And I would get in and I'd be freezing and I'd be shivering and I'd be miserable. And then I caught a wave, and I remembered, I'm a body surfer. That's what I do. And I started doing it. And then I looked forward to it. And we were going, we were going a few times a week. We were going out to South Mission, I guess. And I was getting in every time. And they couldn't drag me out. They couldn't get me out of the water. And then I don't know, something happened and my wife wasn't going anymore. And I was taking the girls, and I always feel like Coronado was more convenient. So I just like hop over the bridge and go to Coronado. And I started taking my girls, just me and the girls would go to Coronado. And they ended up, it's got into September and October, and they didn't want to get in the water. They were complaining that it was too cold. They were complaining about the seaweed, and only I would get in. And then they stopped wanting to come, and only I was going. And I don't know where it came from, but I am into December, I am into January, and I'm getting in twice a week and going body surfing out in Coronado in that water. And everyone says without a wetsuit. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, like 4 years ago, I quit smoking. 3 years ago, I quit drinking. And this year, I get in the water in San Diego in January, and I'm over 50 years old. And I just realize all the time, there's just things inside me. There's things I can be and things I can stop being all the time. It's like there's something right now, and life is exciting and life is good. I haven't been in the water for 2 weeks because of the rain, and I don't want to, and the whatever the water coming up from Tijuana, but probably next week I'll be back in and enjoying catching some waves. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. Where do you swim in Coronado? Where are you swimming?
I'm up right next to Dog Beach. I was in the water a few weeks ago, and I'm always the only one in, and then I hear the lifeguard wah, 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 and the waves were pretty big, and I thought, come on guys, I can handle myself. It's all right. But I came in and I got in, and they said there was a shark attack. So I don't know if y'all have heard about those, but the great whites are out in Coronado, and yeah, that happened. I told my wife about it. She said I can't go out. Asked how I felt about it, and it feels a little bit thrilling. I was in with great whites. I like it.
Oh, it sounds like a very elite white supremacist group. We're the great whites. Get out of the water. Yeah, you should get out of the water is right. That's great because my partner Emily swims in the ocean year round and without a wetsuit too. And isn't it strange when you show up and you walk out in the water in January, February, and people are like trying to stop you, aren't they? Or just like, what are you doing, right?
I was there with my daughters a few weeks ago, and they were on the beach, and I was in the water, and there was a family there just commentating on, who's that crazy guy in the water? Why is he getting in the water? Why is he naked? And
right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for water. We all live in San Diego, and maybe 3% of the population actually goes in the water more than once a year. It's kind of like living across from the Empire State Building and never getting in that elevator. So you need to do it, right?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
That's cool. I've taken enough time.
What's next on our list, Jennifer? Who is it?
Next, we have, let's see. While I'm mixing it up, Joe, I see your comment about the sharks. Yeah, it's funny what a perfectly reasonable joke it is about all the animals in Australia waiting to kill you.
Well, it's not quite as bad as what you hear, but you know, every now and then you get a big huntsman spider on the wall or something. Just, I don't know, you get used to it.
Yeah. So our next storyteller is our newcomer, Sarah.
Sarah from Indiana, friend of Amy's. Welcome. You look like you're in the studios of Jim Henson over there.
Well, yeah, my dog is, he is kind of like cartoony in that picture. He had gotten stung by a bee in his face. So his face wasn't usually that big and crazy looking.
Well, welcome to San Diego in some sort of way.
Thank you. So, right, the theme is like, I can't believe it was inside me.
Yeah, I had that inside me, yes.
Yes, I can't believe I had that inside me. So, man, there's many different directions I can go. But I think the one I will go for right now is the ability to learn another language. And I'm dyslexic, and I always struggled like reading. I like faked reading for a long time. Like in sixth grade, I wrote a book report on a book that didn't exist. And my teacher gave me an A for creativity, but also made it very clear he knew it was a book that didn't exist. So I also knew I like couldn't get away with that again. And like in college, I just took like all the classes you could take where you didn't have to read a lot. So like art. And I was terrible at reading, and I was terrible at languages. And then I decided to go into Peace Corps. And I went to a tiny country called Lesotho. It's a tiny country completely surrounded by South Africa. And there, during training, you live with a family. And even if they know English, they're only allowed to speak Sesotho to you. And then during the day, you go to classes and you learn the language in classes, you learn the language at home. And then in the classes, you do some other things too. But it was, once I was able to be there, and it's in the context of living, I was able to learn another language, which is something I didn't think I would be able to do very well. That was something I was very worried about. And the other thing, I mean, there were many things that I got from that time in my life. But a large thing that I got in that time of my life was like an interest in love and reading. I read more books in those 2 years than I had in the rest of my life combined. There was a lot of downtime because you can't really leave your house. So there was a lot of time for reading. And then because I was in Peace Corps and we had like a library between us, like a Peace Corps volunteers, we had like a library between us. We all kind of read the same books. So we were in like a book club. We basically had like a giant book club. And so you could really have like deep discussions about books that people were reading and get feedback on what other people thought of them and get suggestions. So it was like living in a community where you could have, like groups of people could have conversations about the same thing because we were reading the same thing. But also it was like less diversified because we were all reading the same thing. Like sometimes we would get like free magazines, but we would all get the exact same magazines. So you're all reading all the same articles. So yeah, I really didn't believe I had that in me to read that much, to enjoy reading that much, to learn another language. And really that launched me on all sorts of adventures to where I can trust if something is different and scary and I don't think I can do it, that I can just take the leap and give it a shot. Yeah, I think that's my story. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Sarah. And where is this country? What part of Africa?
It's a tiny country completely surrounded by South Africa. It's called Lesotho. It's the size of Delaware and it's very mountainous.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate your honesty when it comes to there's a word here for me. In a sense, being illiterate, not knowing how to read a book properly, directly, and being able to say that out loud. When it comes to like going to a place where you don't know the language, it probably comes in handy to have these skills on board that help you get by in other times in your life, that apply to other things in your life.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the thing about dyslexia, right? And not really liking reading very much is that my auditory retention is really good. So if you tell me something, chances are I remember it.
Yeah.
And like you can tell me a story years ago and I can recall, at least some of it. Because yeah, you can't you can't like read it again later. I mean, now I totally can. And in fact, professionally, I write grants all the time, which is crazy that now what I do for a living is like so focused on words. But I think what makes me good at it is that if it's poorly written, I can't handle it, so
Right.
so
Cool.
yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah, thank you. So your defects turn into assets later in your life for sure. You got to reach down and grab them. It does make you braver for the rest of your life. Very good. Thank you for joining us as well. And we also have coming up next will be, what's that name, Jennifer?
That name is Kelsey.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kelsey Schultz, formerly from Ohio, formerly from San Diego, formerly of Colorado, has also been on stage with us, not just through Long Story Short, the once a month event we have live in San Diego in a real room, but also has been on our stage at least a couple of times to join us with this story from the bottom of her soul. So give it up one more time, Kelsey Schultz.
Hi, folks. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here and also super nervous. Hi. So I haven't said this story out loud, so let's see how it goes. But let's get going. So I actually moved to Fort Collins in December 2019, which is a great time to move to a new town 3 months before a global pandemic. But one fun part about moving is that you get a new doctor and you get new everything, right? And so one of my first things that I got to do in the new year, very exciting 2020 things to do, was I met my new doctor in about February. And when I met with this doctor, I was like, hey, doc, I just have a question for you because I've just never asked my other doctors. I just assumed what they told me. But now I have this patriarchal bullshit filter that's a little bit stronger. And I thought you might be able to tell me about better birth control options because I hate this IUD. I can't stand it. It is painful. I've had it for 3 years and I'm queer and I'm like, is it necessary? So, and he's like, oh yeah, no, you don't have to have that version of IUD. You can actually have all these other kinds for your blood type, boring medical stuff. So yeah, we should explore that. And I went, oh my gosh, like I kind of just thought of it as this like vanity project that I would pay attention to later when necessary. But then a month later, we were in a pandemic shutdown and I found myself in a new relationship, which was great timing to, not have explored your birth control options sooner. So I thought I was just stuck with this thing. I was like, whatever, we'll just deal with it. It's not a big deal. Until June. June, my first Pride month, being super out to like everybody because I went on stage and said it. I was like super excited and in tons of pain. So about a week before my 29th birthday, I was just doubled over, could not move, tons of cramps, and I was like, fuck this. I don't care if I catch COVID at the doctor's office, this thing's got to come out. I can't do it. So I went to the doctor and he was like, okay. And he they removed it. And it's so weird being in a doctor's office when everyone has PPE, they can't touch you. And it's the most personal experience you can have, being your foot in the stirrup or whatever. And you're like, okay, like, hope I don't catch COVID. So got it removed. And a week later, I was so excited to go in and get my new hormonal birth control inserted. I was like, yeah, this is going to be great. I don't have to deal with this. And I like stroll into the doctor's office and immediately they're like, oh, you have to do a pregnancy test. And I was like, seriously? Like, I just went to the bathroom because you're not supposed to go in a public bathroom during COVID. So, I was humiliated and I'm like sitting on this bathroom going, I literally just went, like, I don't know what I'm going to get out of me. Like, this is humiliating. And I just kept hearing the door on the other side of the bathroom, like, open and shut several times while they're waiting for me. And finally, I just caved and I put it in the slot, come out into the waiting room. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going to tell me that I have to do that all over again. But the water fountain is shut down because of COVID. And I'm just humiliated and I can't go back in there. Well, 20 minutes later, a nurse comes out and she's like, come on back, we're ready for you. And I go into the room and my doctor's sitting there waiting for me. And I was like, okay, let's do this. And he goes, well, we're not going to do this procedure today because you are pregnant. Yep. And I was like, what? And so, and he's like, yeah, you have a pregnancy. Yep. And I was like, I thought I thought the IUD was supposed to that's why I had that, so that this, what? And so, yeah, and he's like, but it's likely that you're having a miscarriage caused by us removing the IUD. So in the span of 1 minute, I was told that I was a mother of a kid that probably would never exist. And the cocktail of emotions that come with that, of like, in that instant, I would do anything to protect that weird thing. I couldn't even call it a baby. I would do whatever it would take to protect it. And at the same time, it felt a wave of relief all at once. That it gave me, like, I chose this IUD when Trump came into office because I thought this kind of thing might happen. And I made that choice so that I wouldn't be in this position, so I wouldn't have to make the decision. So, to wrap it up, I cannot believe I survived that. Like, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. I thought I knew grief until this fucker punched me upside the head over and over and over again for the last year. It's been about 7 months now, and I'm still figuring it out. But honestly, in the last few weeks, I've finally found this peace that I haven't been able to find, waiting for an election and the coup and every other fun thing that comes with a pandemic, and just not getting to grieve with my people or go onto a fucking stage and tell this story to random strangers. Hi. But I know I'm a lot closer to figuring out the shit that I can put up with and survive. Having gone through that, because I know that, I don't know, if I could be a mama bear for some weird chemistry experiment in my uterus, then I can definitely be a mama bear for myself and fight for the life that I'm really proud of and excited for. So, thanks for listening.
Very good. Very good, Kelsey. Thank you for sharing that with everybody. And there's a great degree of hearing yourself talking about something out loud that you haven't mentioned outside of your own head, or maybe not even to another human being, that really does free yourself, and it takes its burden off. And so good to explore those feelings and own them, for good or for bad. But thanks for bringing that up to us, Kelsey. Thank you. Very nice. We also have another person coming up. What does this person's name start with, Jennifer?
That's all you want is the first initial?
Yeah, like I'm going to guess it. Go ahead. Give me 2 initials.
The first initial is T.
T could be Terry Bowen.
It's Tracy.
Could be Tracy Starrin. Is it TB? Oh, I was not.
Tracy.
Tracy,
Sorry, I
I can't. Excuse me. I meant to say. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was talking over you. Go again.
It's Tracy.
It is. I knew it. Fucking. God damn it. How are you, Tracy? Tracy's joining us from Queens, New York. She's also very active in storytelling community in New York City and the metropolitan area. You got anything coming up that you want to plug or talk about?
Yeah, I have I'm doing Soul Stories Live. That's Chicago. It's February 20th. I'm doing 7 by 7 on the 27th, and I'm doing Oi Stories, Kvetching and Quelling, and that's on the 28th. All of them are online.
Very good. Thanks for sharing your stuff with us tonight, Tracy.
Thank you.
Tracy
Okay.
Starrin, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. So I was laying face down flat on Dr. Marco's exam table, and he said, we're almost done. It won't be much longer. But he had already said that 3 times. So I turned and I said, Dr. Marco, I don't think I'm going to believe you anymore, because I think that you are a fibber. And then he started to laugh, and then I started to laugh, and we were both laughing. And then he said, oh no, don't laugh. You have a needle in your spine. And we both got very still and quiet. And then he considered that for a second, and he said to me, I don't think I've ever had to say that to anyone before. And we both started cackling like mad. And that's how I started what would be 2 weeks in the hospital for a neurological condition. A spinal tap is it's a diagnostic tool. They use it to figure out what's the matter with you. But before I had that, I had to have a CAT scan to prove that I didn't have a brain tumor, because it turns out if you have, what they told me was if you have a spinal tap, when you have a brain tumor, really bad stuff can happen. But I did brain tumor, because as soon as I started experiencing symptoms, as soon as I had that dark spot in the corner of my eye, even before it started moving all the way across, even before it took most of the vision of my left eye, I went online and I looked it up. And WebMD told me that I probably had a brain tumor. And what did the doctors know? All they had was years of education and training. I had the internet. So I told them that I knew it was a brain tumor, and they told me I was going to be fine. But I had to have a CAT scan before I could have this spinal tap. And to be honest, I didn't really know who to root for, because if I proved them right, that I was right, then that meant I had a brain tumor. But if they were right and I had no brain tumor, I still had to have the spinal tap. So they were right, and I had the spinal tap, because what I turned out I didn't have a brain tumor. I had a condition called pseudotumor, which is when your body believes and behaves as if you had a tumor. In this case, it meant I had extra spinal fluid being stored in my skull. And so they checked me into the hospital for observation and treatment. And the treatment for pseudotumor is, if you can believe this, repetitive therapeutic spinal taps. Now, when we say therapeutic, we mean calming and soothing, like a massage or Enya music. That's not what doctors mean when they say therapeutic. They mean treatment as opposed to diagnostic. So I had a spinal tap every single day. That's the treatment for what I had, because they were pulling extra spinal fluid out of my body. Doctors would come to my room every day, and in my bed in the hospital, they would hold me down and stick a needle in my spine. And that is exactly as bad as you think it is. And on what would have been my 8th spinal tap, on that day, my doctor came to my room and he saw how weary I was and how bruised my back was, and that those spinal taps hadn't yielded any positive results. And he said, we're going to try something else today. He said, he took my untouched breakfast tray and he said, don't eat anything, because we're going to think about surgery today. They had been talking about surgery, and it was tentatively scheduled for that Monday. This was a Friday. And pretty soon, a distinguished man with close cropped white hair came in, and he talked to me for a while, and he decided on the spur of the moment that he would add an extra brain surgery to his Friday evening schedule. And then everything moved very fast. I had to have a bunch of pre-op tests, which they did all at my bedside. And then they put me on a gurney, and a surgical resident named Tony wheeled me through the hospital corridor so fast that my hair was blowing through the breeze. And he smashed that gurney through those OR doors. And before I knew it, an anesthesiologist had a mask over my face and was telling me to count back from 100. And the next thing I knew, I was waking up in my room. And my face was swollen to twice its normal size, and my head was all bandaged up, and my hair was full of blood and bone and betadine, because they, as if they were medieval doctors freeing me from evil spirits, had drilled a hole in my head to get out the excess spinal fluid. And I had tubes running in and out of every part of my body. I sat in that hospital bed and I thought, how did I possibly get here? And I thought, and how am I ever going to get out of here? How is all this ever going to be okay again? But days pass and time heals, and distance gives us perspective. And so when I have a day now where I'm particularly grumpy and I think this is the worst day ever, I remind myself, at least nobody's going to drill a hole in my head today. And then I think, maybe it's not such a bad day after all. That's my story. Thank you.
Real good. We're all wondering, Tracy, why no drugs?
No drugs. Not only I got nothing. You hear about all these people getting all kinds of opioids pushed on them. You know what I got? I got Tylenol. That's what they sent me home with. Tylenol. That's all I got.
Yeah. Spinal Tap is no different from an Iron Maiden. And I don't mean the band, but I mean the medieval torture thing. You get into a tomb filled with nails and driven through you and closed on you. Yeah, good stuff.
Thanks.
That's why you like metal music, isn't it?
It's part of my whole oeuvre.
Thanks, Tracy. Thanks for
Thank you.
taking the pain just to share it with us.
This is exactly what I had in mind.
Yeah, nice. Thank you so much, Tracy.
Thank
Really
you.
good. Does anyone else have any questions for as regards to spinal taps?
Hmm?
There's probably some more questions for you, but if you would just leave your in the notes there, just tell us where you're going to be next month telling stories, so we can.
Oh, sure. We'll do.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.
Coming up next is somebody called Jennifer. What's this next person?
Next person is our wonderful vamp producer from this past month, Kelly Bowen.
Kelly Bowen.
Hi,
I met Kelly Bowen just over a year ago. I met her at the long story short best of, which was called The Magnificent Seven at the Diversionary Theater, and it was on a Saturday night. And Justin Hudnell had introduced me to her, and I spent the party speaking with her. And what I noticed about her, she had just, I do believe, gotten into storytelling as an art. She's a bass player that's played with a lot of bands. She knows the stage, but I really was engrossed by her passion for telling stories that was new to her, perhaps. And there's something really exciting about that enthusiasm to share, vulnerable parts of yourself with the rest of the world and a bunch of strangers, of course. So good to see you again, Kelly. Welcome. Thank you.
Well, those are two heavy stories, really powerful stories. Mine's going to take it a little different direction. I hazard to think I am probably the only person who can say they survived the COVID-19 quarantine experience by going to urgent care because a bee flew up their nose. This was early May, and a friend used to keep a beehive on my property. And one of the great pleasures I was taking in working from home is sitting outside in the sun, working from home. This is great. And he'd been here to deal with the hive. Okay, no big deal. Well, the bees were kind of stirred up, and I'm working, and then his bees kept coming around. So okay, fine, they win. Begrudgingly, I went inside. The next day I tried to go out again, same thing. The bees were still on. God, the bees are really stirred up. Went back inside, gave up to them. Like figured, well, okay, he harvested honey, whatever, they'll calm down. So 2 days later, finally, I'm scared off of the back patio, but I'm sitting out front on my front porch, got my laptop in hand, and I'm writing because, like David said, I'm now addicted to storytelling. And I'm sitting there, and like all is fine. It's about half hour. Finally, no bees outside, and there's no bees. But the beehive's like 150 yards back. I'm just minding my own business, and then it sounds. It doesn't sound like bees kind of. It's like, and it comes flying in, and I see it approaching my face, and as fast as I could think, oh my God, it's not going to fly up. It flew up my nose. And I had this moment, I want to throw my laptop and run, but I don't want to throw my laptop and run. And I've got a bee up my fucking nose. And I quickly kind of set my laptop down, and I'm trying to figure out, what am I going to do? And I brought my hand up to my nose, but I'm thinking, well, wait, if I squeeze my nose, this thing's going to sting me. I've got some kind of, like, maybe I can do something to get this bee out without it stinging me. And I'm in that moment of indecision, and I feel it crawl farther up my nose. So I can feel this, and I have this horror flash. This is all just cooking along. This horror flash of, oh my God, what if it crawls into my sinus cavities? Like, how far can this bee go? Like, what the hell am I going to do about this? And so then I start to bring my hand up again, and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm going to do. And I just breathed out like super hard, like, like I've got the giantest clogged nose you could ever possibly, and the bee comes out. And I literally crawled in the floor, like the door, grab my laptop because I don't want to lose my laptop, crawl in the door, close the door behind me, and just flop down on the floor. I'm like a foot inside the door. And my kid, she comes running out, Mom, are you okay? I'm like, I just had a bee fly up my nose. No. She's like, did it sting you? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. No. Yeah, it did. And so then I'm dealing with my nose is not too swollen, but like, okay, bee stings, you can't leave the stinger in there. I can't see in my nose. I've been a hermit because I'm a cancer survivor. I'm still dealing with recovery from my cancer treatment. And I don't want to go to fucking urgent care. I call the doctor's office, like, what am I gonna do? Yeah, I'm really sorry. Yeah, you're gonna need, so they send me to the urgent care, which at this point in early May, of course, this is when we're all thinking that the world is coming to a categoric end and we're all really gonna die from it, as opposed to now when people really, really are all dying from it. So they send me up to the urgent care. That is the place they send every COVID patient. And I'm just like, I'm looking at everybody like, oh my God, I'm gonna get the plague, get led back. They actually were really, really efficient. The guy there was, I felt so stupid. Like, I'm here because the bee flew up my nose. But he was actually really grateful because apparently at that point, like they were actually losing customers and business because nobody wanted to go in for regular things. And he couldn't find the bee stinger in my nose. So great. He talked about swelling that I might deal with and whatnot. But I opted, he offered me some like gnarly steroids. I'm like, it's okay. I'll deal with them. Thanks. Went home, ice was just swollen, uncomfortable. The next day, I moved back out to the patio to sit down and write again. I'm thinking, should I be doing this? And I had a bandana because, I'm like super, super paranoid. And I'm sitting there and I'm, again, minding my own business. And anytime I see anything fly by, I pull the bandana up and at least I don't look ridiculous because it's COVID. And again, I hear fly towards me and I'm thinking, oh, but my eyes. So I duck my head down and I feel a bee land in my hair. And I'm thinking, what in God's name is going on? And oh shit. So I'm trying to figure out now. I've got to, but I want to go inside, but I got a bee in my hair. So I stood up to go inside, and it flew off of my head, and it landed on my arm. And in the amount of time to turn my arm to look at it, it stung me. Went inside. My kid was helping me get the stinger out, and we hear the bathroom window outside the screen of the bathroom, like trying to get in at us outside the screen. So it turns out I call the beekeeper. He had put out a couple of extra boxes, and it wasn't his bees, but I'm on a canyon, and apparently an Africanized hive had taken up residence in this box. And coincidentally, a couple of days, the day that he had dealt with the hive, about 3 doors down, some people had found a hive on their property, and they'd done what you're not supposed to do, and they attempted to spray it. So what did they do? They aggravated a hive. I had a lovely new box. They took it on there, and we had Africanized bees that had been, actually one of my neighbors, I found out later, had been chased about 1,500 yards. Like he literally rode his bike trying to get away from these bees. So my beekeeper was kind enough, he took away that hive. He got in his bee jacket, he said 40 times, including like 20 under his hood. And that is the story of how I got stung up my nose by an Africanized killer bee during the COVID-19 crisis.
That's the bee's knees. Thank you, Kelly.
I think it was more like the bee's ass.
Right. yeah, growing up in the 70s, there was this thing about the African killer bees coming here, and they made several movies about it. So if you're gonna get stung by a bee, as long as it's not from Africa, you'll be okay. But
No, I grew up.
made you
I
feel-
remember when those movies came out, and my brother, who's a couple years older, had like told me, and we're both like, "Oh my God, we're all gonna die!" Like the images of the figures surrounded by 500 bees. It only takes
Right.
one.
Right. Yeah, I remember they were like tracking them. And they're like coming in through Central America. They just never showed up except for that canyon near where you live.
Well, apparently they're actually all over, and one of the many advantages of honeybees is they actually deter the Africanized bee population. So there's the plug to actually keep bees. But yeah, the Africanized ones, they're motherfuckers.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, thanks for that, Kelly.
absolutely.
Very much.
Thanks for letting me tell my story.
Yeah. Again, what do we got left for names, Jennifer? Is it more?
We have 3 storytellers left.
All right, let's get through them because I want to hear them. So without any further ado, the next one is going to be
Next one is John Jarvis.
John Jarvis. John Jarvis came into, long story short, in our University Avenue storefront and told a story and then came back and told another one. I haven't seen you in a while, John. Like I haven't seen a lot of people. I'm really glad to see you again. And thanks for bringing a piece of yourself tonight. John Jarvis.
You bet, David. And it's funny, I came on this virtual event one other time with no intention of telling a story, and you twisted my arm and I did it on the fly, and you've done it again tonight. So it's very, very loosely on the theme. Just know that, please. And before I even go, and it's going to be short, I think, I want to speak back. Like Kelsey, the story you told was incredibly powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And by the way, if you aren't watching Kelsey on the screen as other people are still telling stories, you're missing a whole other show. She's super impressive. It's kind of just as an aside. And Casey, your story about not using drugs, it reminded me of my father. I thought you all might like to know that my father doesn't like getting shots. So when he goes to the dentist, like for a filling, he does it without Novocaine. Just very odd. Okay, here's my story. I miss Tijuana. I miss Mexico. I grew up here in San Diego and we used to go down all the time. And it's so sad. And I don't know if she's right. My wife, she's actually rarely wrong. She doesn't want to go anymore. She thinks it's dangerous. And as I say, she's likely right. But one night we went down and we weren't married yet. We were just dating at the time. And it was a classic Tijuana night up and down Revolucion. We actually went to Jai Alai and what's the big building called? The Fronton, I think. And drinking all the way, the Long Bar and all the classics. And we were pretty primed by the time it came to go home. And, they have those little, I don't know if they still do, but there was a woman selling in a little cardboard box, these little chicks, and they like feed them colored water or something. So they turn like purple and green and red and these little colored chicks, and they were $1 each. I think I probably haggled for the price of the chick. But we bought a little chick. Chirp, 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 super cute. And get in the car to head back home, not thinking like, what are we going to do with this little chick? And we get to the border, and we're like, oh shit, put it in the glove box. And so we put this little chick in the glove box and come up to the border agent, he says, citizenship, US, anything to declare. And I look at him, and in the background, suddenly there's this he says, anything to declare? And I said, nothing but a little chick in the glove box that we bought on Revolucion. And he says, you told me, because otherwise you'd be heading over to secondary and have a big problem. But because you did tell me, I'm going to let you do this little U-turn, go back in, lose the chick, get back in line, and you can come across the border again. And that's exactly what we did. We went back and let the little chick go. And the only way I can make this fit the theme is to take you back into the earlier in the night and tell you one of the favorite parts of going into Tijuana for me, something I miss as much as the bars on Revolucion, was like outside the Jai Alai arena and these bacon dogs, these bacon wrapped hot dogs on the little push carts on the streets of Tijuana. And I think I had 3 of them that night with the salsa. And I don't know if that's brave or stupid, but they are so, so good. And yeah, so that's what I couldn't believe was inside of me. And that's my story for tonight. Thank you for letting me share.
Chicks, right, man? Chicks, right, man?
Chirp, chirp, chirp.
Thanks, John. Look forward to seeing you again soon. We have 2 more. Who's that? Who's the second from last? Is it David Zafra?
The 2 people know who they are. So we
Let's
have
make them.
David Z.
That's me.
Hey, Johnson. David, welcome back to the show. The father of twins.
You guessed it.
He's a grocer. He's also a stand-up, and he's also you have a podcast still going on?
Well, you know, podcasting is tough during the pandemic. It's difficult to get guests, so I don't have anything going on right now, but hopefully more podcasts in the near future.
All right. Looking forward to it. Dave Zafra, everybody.
All right, so I'm getting divorced. That's where this story started, and you know, this has been kind of like a process. Me and my wife had a breakup about a year ago, and I keep thinking about this thing that happened, which is so we had this breakup, and 2 things that were inside of me that I didn't realize. One of them was a bursting appendix. My appendix got taken out last year, or maybe it was the year before that. I'm bad with time, but I started feeling this pain late one night after work, and I went home. And at the time, me and my wife had broken up, and so I came home. She wasn't there. She was with this other dude, and she decided to spend the night with him that day. And so I was home by myself. This was like a recent breakup, and so we were still living together because we were too broke to move away from each other. So that day, she's out with this other person. I'm like writhing in the bed all night because I have this horrible pain and I can't figure out what it is. And so I have to like drive myself to the hospital in the morning, and I go into, I didn't want to go to the ER because I wasn't sure what it was. I thought maybe it was just like a really bad stomach pain. So I went to urgent care, and the person told me, like, whatever test that they do to find out what's going on with you, it's like, yeah, this thing needs to come out immediately. And so I like rushed myself to the ER. I don't even know if she's home at this point or not, but she ended up meeting me at the hospital later that point, or that day, and kind of like took care of me and stuff like that, which I kind of began, it kind of began the process of us ending up back together. Like we were broken up and things weren't good. But then like I got sick and I needed somebody to help me, and she was there. And so she took care of me and stuff like that. And that kind of began this process of us getting back together. But I guess the problem now is that I'm dealing with this separation, and like everything that I do in my life right now is like motivated by like rage and revenge. Like I can't be happy knowing that anything good is going on with her, and everything seems like a competition. So like that's like my full motivation right now, and I don't know how to do it. I don't know what to do about it. I talked to a therapist recently, and her advice was basically for me to stop doing that, which I don't know how to. That's my whole point, is I wish I could, like, that's all I want. Like, this is like, I think about it when I eat, because I'm like, dude, I need to get like hot because then I'll be winning in this relationship. If I can get really good looking and really good at a bunch of stuff, then I'll be able to like live happily, because I feel like I would have like crushed her in this breakup. But it, like I'm having this imaginary competition with nobody, and I haven't been able to figure out what to do about it yet. This thing is the thing that's living inside of me right now. And I just think about moments like that, like moments in the past where I had all this stuff going on, where I'm dying of an appendix and up with somebody else, or other events in my life where I'm like, I should be fucking happy and cool that this is gone and done with. And this should have happened a long time ago, but it's like that feeling that I can't get over. And so I'm struggling with that a lot right now. And I got to figure out what to do. I just, like I mentioned earlier in the Zoom call, I started skating, and even that feels like a little bit of a jab to her, because she started roller skating like slightly before I did, but now I'm like way better at it than her. So like, but I have to stop thinking about it that way. Like it really needs to just stop. This is the thing. It's like a thing, like similar to my appendix. I need this jealousy and rage taken out of me. And so that's what I'm working on right now. And hopefully I get to that point. There's no resolution to the story because it's still ongoing. So I guess I might have to just check in next, long story short, and find out if I was able to resolve my issues or not.
Well, thanks, David. The thing about your issues is that they're entertaining us for us right now. And whether or not you've resolved them, sometimes those are the best stories, the ones that do not have a bow on the end of it. But they're still rife with emotions like jealousy and I want to be better and I want to be that guy. Yeah. Thanks, David. Appreciate.
Thanks.
Thank you for pouring that out. Thank you. We have one more, Jennifer.
We do. We saved the last for last. And that is Mr. Kirk.
KF, ladies and gentlemen, Kirk Faulkner. One of the nicest guys that I know. I'm always happy to see him. I'm sure he's going to share what's going on with him lately, but I haven't seen him in a few months. I look forward to seeing you again in the environment and doing some stuff with you. In the last year, I've gotten into scooters. I've been riding a lot of scooters. I have a couple scooters, and I asked Kirk if he wanted to go for a ride with me, because I was like, this is a good thing to do with somebody, because I have another bike they can ride with me. And he's like, yeah, I rode a dirt bike when I was a kid. Yeah, I know what I'm doing. But it was great because a couple of days later, he texted me to say, he goes, I can't fucking see shit. My eyes aren't that good, so I have to say no.
That was a real vulnerable moment for me, man. Like I wanted to be the cool kid to go ride motorcycles, but these Coke bottle glasses say no.
No, but I thought that was braver than any really Evil Knievel has ever done.
Yeah.
Was saying, you know what, I want to, but this is what's stopping me.
Yeah. No. If I rode motorcycles on any kind of regular basis, I would die of them very quickly.
Well, thanks for being brave and admitting it. Ladies and gentlemen, Kirk Faulkner.
So in 1999, I moved to Siberia to serve a Mormon mission, and I was there all over places in Siberia for about 2 years. And while I was there, I grew up. I was a wimpy kid. I was a nerdy kid, and I didn't experience a ton of violence growing up. I've gotten some schoolyard fights here and there. My parents weren't violent with me. But when I got to Russia, I started to experience violence on a very regular basis. Like it was kind of like every day something small would happen. Once a week, something medium would happen. Once a month, some kind of catastrophe would happen. And we got robbed, we got beat up, we got broken into our apartment. And it just never stopped. It was every day was a little bit like, what's going to happen today. And I remember I would come home at night and touch the door handle and just go safe for like another 10 hours before we go back outside. And it was hard on me in ways that I don't know if I ever gave it the credit for. And it went on like that for 24 months. And the last month of my mission, I was training what we called a greenie, someone who was brand new in the country, and I was leaving soon. So I was trunky because I'd had my trunks packed already. And one night we were out just as dusk was falling. And as we were walking, these two guys came up to us. And you guys remember the show, The Adventures of Pete and Pete on Nickelodeon? Imagine Pete and Pete if they were 17-year-old heroin addicts living in Russia. It's kind of the look that these two guys had. And they walked up, and the first one just leaned in and just socked me in the face as hard as he could. And I remember this, we had this policy in our mission where you weren't allowed, if you got in if somebody hit you or something like that, you had to run away, because if you got in a fight, it could jeopardize the church's standing in there. Like if you got arrested or something, it would be a whole diplomatic mess. So we had a 100% no fighting back policy. And I had abided by that the entire time. And I had kind of tried to maintain in my heart that blah, 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 turn the other cheek, whatever. But this time, after 24 months of this, and just so many horrible little demeaning things, I just snapped. And I turned around to my companion who was with me, and I said, and he was running by this point because he had gotten hit too, and he's running away. And I said, "Get back here. We're kicking these guys' asses." And he turns to me and he says, "That one there just stabbed me in the back." And I looked over, and the guy's holding a shiv about this long, and it's glistening with my friend's blood. And I turn him out, like, "Okay, never mind, we're running." And so we start running, and they chased us for a long time. We're running through deep snow. It's kind of like a nightmare. Can you imagine, like, just you can barely get your feet up, and there's heroin addicts with knives coming after you. So we get back to our apartment. We managed to lose them. And we get back to the apartment, and I investigate the puncture wound. And it's, it's kind of like right up back here. And it's only about that big. It's just like maybe 1.5 inches. And so I say, "It doesn't look that bad." He's like, "It felt like it went in pretty deep." He's like, "I could feel it like pull out for like 1.5 seconds. And I'm like, "Okay, well, let's keep an eye on you." And within 5 minutes, he started blacking out. He just starts losing consciousness intermittently. So I decide that maybe, okay, that's probably not a good sign. So I call an ambulance, or I call my friend, I call a Russian guy. He says, "Okay, call the ambulance." We wait about 30 minutes for the ambulance to show up. And when it does, it's a van, just a van with like benches bolted to the wheel wells that we're sitting on in the back. And the two guys who are driving are both smoking and listening to Britney Spears. I remember sitting in this van more clearly than almost any memory of my entire life, because I'm here with this guy who's brand new in the country. This guy was so nervous to be in Russia. He was so scared to come to Russia. And the first month he was there, he gets stabbed in the back by a heroin addict. And I'm responsible for him. And we're out fucking forever from anybody. There's no one. There's no backup. Like the only American I know is probably like a 6-hour taxi ride away. So we go to the Russian hospital. And Russian hospitals, this is the fact I love about them. It's a fun fact. When you have a glass of water in a Russian hospital at night, you have to cover it, because if you don't cover your water, the cockroaches that fall off the ceiling will fall in your water. So you got to make sure that water's covered. You don't want those. So we get to the Russian hospital, and the doctors look at him and they're like, "It's not serious. It's just a little puncture wound. He's going to be fine. Everything's fine." They're like, "Go home, grab his pajamas, bring him back. He'll spend the night here. It's fine." I'm like, "Okay." Go home, get his pajamas. I come back. He is in surgery. They have shaved off his pubic hair and cut open his entire back and are now doing surgery on his organs in a Siberian hospital. So whatever was the deal, it has now gotten very serious. And I go and I met with the head of the hospital, and they told me to expect him to die. They're like, don't get your hopes up. This probably isn't going to end well. And I remember around that time, I mean, I remember through this whole thing that I was expecting myself to be panicking, but I wasn't panicking. And I wouldn't even say I felt calm. I felt dead inside. I felt like whatever happened, like if he died, if I died, if nuclear war happened, it didn't matter to me at all. I was just going to make the decisions that had to go through each step of this, because what the fuck was I going to do? I was alone in Siberia with a stabbed guy. And so I just went through it. I rode the whole thing. He got out of surgery. He said the worst part about it was that a bunch of female Russian nurses saw his dick, and he was really embarrassed about that. And they put him in a bed and turned out the lights in his Russian room. And I sat there in the dark next to his bed, thinking quietly as cockroaches fell on my lap. Thanks.
Nice. Thanks, Kirk. You know, Siberia, and I might add, I just happen to know this from knowing Kirk, is that the Mormon Church had sent Kirk to Siberia at age, what, 20?
19.
19, right. And you look at movies, you look at television, you look at Hogan's Heroes, if you remember that show, about a German prison camp for prisoners of war. And they all talked about the worst thing that could happen. If you keep this up, Schultz, you're going to go to Siberia. Like that was like the worst place they could send you.
Yeah.
And so these elders were looking across the map of the world. They were like, let's send Kirk to Siberia. Well, why not? What's the worst that could happen?
It's
cockroaches.
It's as bad as you.
What could happen, right?
No, I mean, you know, Russia's a storied country with a beautiful history, blah, blah, blah.
Thank you so much. I just want to share something real quick. Is that the list of everybody?
That's everybody.
Okay, I just want to wrap this up with something that I had the most incredible feeling last night. I was riding my scooter across the Coronado Bridge, which is about a 2-mile span or whatever it might be. And I'm going like 60, and it's just before sundown. It's just after 5, and it's beautiful. And I get to see the whole city and the water, and I'm smiling because I got my first COVID vaccination yesterday. And going into it, I was very, do you ever feel like a phony, like you don't deserve something? So I'm a caregiver, and I went there armed with letters from clients of mine. I went there with like doctor's notes saying this is what he does. He's around these people. He needs this. And so I'm very nervous walking into the Coronado Rec Center next to City Hall in Coronado and getting my shot. And went through a series of checkpoints, and I kept getting further and further, and I felt still like a phony, like someone's going to tell me that you can't have this or whatever. But it's all I want right now because I need some control over this. So here's what happened for me is that I finally get to the last desk, and it's a fireman from Coronado Fire Department. And if you've never been to Coronado, it's kind of like a town that's in an imaginary railroad train set, right? A toy train set town kind of thing, you know? Everyone's just very happy, and you know, things are always good for people in Coronado. And here's a fireman who looks like he's a Coronado fireman, you know? And made some small talk, and he said, can
you put that in my pocket?
Oh yeah, sure.
So I have to roll up my sleeve, and I'm purposely wearing a short sleeves. And there's something on my arm that happened to me years ago. Being a heroin addict, I would get these abscesses on my arm, and I still have this stigma on my arm. It's still there. You can see it. Not everyone knows what it is, but it only comes out in vulnerable times if I'm at the beach or if I perhaps choose to show it to you. And he saw it, and he said, what's wrong with your deltoid? What happened to your deltoid? And I knew I was getting the shot. And this wound happened 20 years ago, and it'll never go away. It's always there. It's scarred forever. It's what happens when you in your arm and you try to get this thing inside of you to make you feel better, to keep you from being dope sick. So I had this habit of doing this, and so and he said, "What happened to your arm?" And I said, it was the way I said it, very confidently and very quickly. I said, "Oh, I was a heroin addict." And I said this with such confidence because I knew that I'm not that person anymore, and I knew that I deserved the shot, and I was like this close to like realizing that I was doing something different in my life. And one of the things I told him was, "I've been to your firehouse because I've had spaghetti dinners there. I've been there for the last couple of years because they have these fundraisers for this music they do. And it would be the last place I'd ever go to. But I knew about these spaghetti dinners at his firehouse," and he thanked me. And again, he asked me, and this is my answer, what is wrong with your arm? And I said, "I was a heroin addict, but I don't do that anymore." And it was the way he looked at me. He didn't say, because I've had this before, they go, "Oh," or "Okay," or mostly just, "Oh." But he was like, he leaned in and he was like, "Dude, that's awesome." And I just felt so good walking out of there. And I high-fived him, and I got back on my bike, and I drove over that bridge again. And I felt so good coming home. Thank you. Right. It's hard to wrap up your your own story, but I do want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. I want to thank Vicky for going first, of course. Vicky and her Jim Morrison boyfriend, who she beat the shit out of. I want to thank Kevin for learning how to body surf. Let's give it up for Joe and making a brave decision to move to a country perhaps he's never been to and stay there and be a nurse and share himself with the rest of the world. Thank you, Joe. Sarah for bringing to light what it's like to be dyslexic and get away with it and grow beyond that. I also wanted to say thanks to Kelsey for sharing something that, like she said earlier, had never shared it with anybody else out loud. Tracy for all the spinal taps that you do. It's better than the movie. It's your own spinal tap. Thank you for doing that and getting on the other side of it. Kelly, thanks for the bee's knees, bees up your nose from Africa, best title in the world. John, thank you for picking up chicks. It's great. It's a lost art. Not everyone can do it, but you braved the whole border and told the cop all about it. Thank you. And myself, and did I miss anybody?
Kurt.
Thanks, guys, for showing up the way you did tonight, and for helping me give something to look forward to through a Zoom call. As always, I look forward to seeing all you guys in person and bringing that energy into one room and hearing that laughter, hearing that silence of vulnerability, one of my favorite sounds in the world. And again, for you sharing yourselves. Thanks, guys. I hope to see you soon enough.
Thanks, everybody.